teachers, this is an amazing turnout. Wow, this is a historic moment. How many people in this room is very cool. Thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy this session. It's a new one for me, so if you've heard me speak before, you'll see some similarity, but not much. So I hope it's something you like. So I'm going to start by asking a question. Who in this room has ever been given the idea either they're not a math person, they can't go forward with some math, or that they don't belong in a math classroom? A lot of us, right? And we're math teachers. And these ideas that are so prevalent out there amongst kids are fueled by a single myth that's out there in the population that's very strong, that we all have to work to get rid of, that there is such a thing as a math person or a math brain that some people are born with and some people are not. We have plenty of brain evidence that shows this isn't the case. Nobody's born with a math brain, nobody's born without one, and the incredible brain plasticity that shows us that brains can grow and change for any level of mathematics. So I'm just going to share with you new studies on this, because I know many of you have seen the taxi drivers and many of our other studies. This one came from Stanford in the past year, and I think it's so important. They brought in 7 to 9-year-old children. Half of them had been diagnosed as having mathematics learning disabilities in school, and half of them had not. And they had brain scans on these kids while they worked on maths, and lo and behold, they found brain differences. This is what they found. The kids with the learning disabilities had more brain activity going on in their brains. And that might be counterintuitive. We think of kids with learning disabilities having less going on in their brains. They actually have more going on. But that's not always good, because you want to focus in on certain brain areas. So in this study, they trained kids for 8 weeks. They gave them one-to-one tutoring. They worked on number lines and bingo, different forms of mathematics. At the end of that 8-week period, the kids with learning disabilities not only had the same achievement as the other kids, but their brains were functioning in exactly the same way. We have study after study that is showing us that everybody's brains can grow and change, and we have to stop having schools decide who can and who can't do math at an early age and teaching them differently. So the other great evidence we have, many of you know of, I know, is around mindset. We know that when kids believe that they can learn anything, that actually changes what they achieve. This graph just shows you the achievement of kids going through 7th and 8th grade. The only difference between them was their mindsets at the beginning. They had the same teachers. And you can see it's kids with a growth mindset who believe I can learn anything, that go on to achieve at higher levels in maths and in life. And we know that giving kids a growth mindset is particularly important, both for girls and for students of colour. So it is those students less than others who believe in themselves and who need these mindset messages. So we know that when learning happens, a synapse fires in your brain, and a synapse is like an electric current that moves between parts of the brain. And if you learn something deeply, that synapse will turn into a permanent brain pathway. We also know, very exciting, that mistakes grow your brain. And in fact, what they found in MRI scans, where they have people with MRI scans on them, they find that every time you make a mistake, a synapse fires in your brain. Fantastic news. Your brain actually grows when you make a mistake, more than when you get work correct. Now, a lot of teachers have said to me, but surely that can't be right. Your brain is only going to grow if you correct the mistake and get it right. But no, what the study found was 2 possible synapses. The first one comes when you make a mistake. The second one comes when you're aware you've made a mistake. So then people say to me, well, how can your brain grow when you make a mistake if you don't even know you've made a mistake? And the best evidence we have on this is your brain grows when you make a mistake, even if you don't know you've made one, because it's the time when your brain is struggling and when it's challenged. And those are the times that are most beneficial for brain growth. So this study also showed something which I thought was amazing. And it showed very clearly that when we believe in ourselves and when we think differently about ourselves, our brains actually operate differently. And this is what they found. This is like a heat map of brains in this study of people's brains. And what they found was that people with a growth mindset who made a mistake, their brains lit up and grew. They're literally on fire with brain growth, compared to the ones with a fixed mindset who made a mistake. Their brains also grew, but not to the same extent. And what this tells us is something very clear that many other brain studies tell us. And it is that the way we believe, what we believe about ourselves, and how we feel even about something will change cognition in your brain. So this is a message that's important for all of us, not just for math students in classrooms, for you guys. For you, when you're teaching, when you're doing something really challenging, if you go into a situation and you think, I believe in myself, I'm going to get through this, I know I can do this, and you struggle and fail, your brain will react better and grow more than if you go into that situation thinking, I can't do this. It's really important that we change kids' beliefs about what they can do. And in fact, we have focused in maths education for so long on the right way to introduce a fraction, or which set of standards we're using, and we have ignored what kids are feeling about themselves and what they believe about their own potential in maths classrooms. And we saw the number of people who've been given damaging messages about their potential. It's very widespread. And only now are we beginning to understand just how important that is. So as an illustration of this, this is another study that came out this past year. This one, published in Science magazine, the top journal, found this. They asked university professors how much they believed in the gift, that you needed to have a gift to do well in their subject. And what they found was, the more that any academic field valued the idea of a gift, the fewer women and the fewer African American students were in their field. And that held across all 30 subjects they looked at. So you won't be able to see this graph very clearly, but I'll tell you what's on it. The top set of subjects at the top are STEM subjects, and underneath are humanities subjects. And the further the subject is to the right, the stronger the professors believe in a gift. And as you can see, probably math is way out there, with the most strong views that you have to have a gift to do well in math. And the lower they are, the fewer women. This graph shows the number of women in the field. So this is where you see that correlation. And interestingly, the matching subject in humanities is philosophy. Apparently you need a gift to learn philosophy. I have a theory that the philosophy's out there because it's also taught by math professors, but I'm not sure. That's just my theory. But what we know is that if professors' ideas about you need a gift to do well in this class harm adults to that extent, what do those ideas do to young children? And we have to work to stop this idea that some kids have a gift. When we put kids into gifted and talented programs, we're damaging those kids' mindsets, whether they're in it or whether they're not in it. And we have to move from these ideas. So along the same lines, you probably will agree with me that you can't give a bigger fixed mindset message than by putting kids into tracks. And we know from Carol Dweck's research that at the point kids move into tracks, they will switch from a growth to a fixed mindset. And it happens most to kids going into top tracks. They start to believe, I have a gift, I'm smart, and they start that fragile path that will harm them. So some very recent data, very interesting, that comes from 8th grade students in the Bay Area. This comes from David Foster and his work. They actually have two cohorts, large cohorts to look at. In 2014, 63% of kids were in accelerated math classes across these different Bay Area districts. But by 2015, they'd done work with the schools, they detracked. Only 12% of students were in advanced classes. So we have these 11,500 students from one cohort and the next cohort and two sets of data on their California standards. This is what they are. So what do you see there? A huge push when they took away advanced classes towards higher levels. Look at the high achievers. People worry about the high achievers when there aren't advanced classes. There are many more of them when the detracking happens. So I do want to point out though, detracking is a very complicated thing. It involves getting a lot of people on board, parents, districts. And it doesn't mean that when you detrack maths classes, everyone does the same mathematics. That's not what it means. You have to provide either more open work or differentiated work, so kids can take it in different places. The difference is you don't tell kids where they're going to go with maths work. Detracking doesn't mean, I have to point this out to parents, that kids can't reach high levels. They can still reach calculus, and in fact San Francisco, you may know, voted unanimously to have no advanced classes until 11th grade in the district. And when there was huge controversy, as you might imagine, backlash from parents, when the first set of Common Core test results came out, they had gone up to be the highest achieving district urban district in California. So in my book, Mathematical Mindsets, which some of you know, I talk about moving from these old systems of tracking and fixed messages to a more growth mindset types of grouping. But now I want to get on to something I'm really excited about, and it's new research that we just released on our website this week, and some of you may have seen this. And what the research is saying is that mathematics learning is extremely visual in the brain. And in fact, there's 5 areas of the brain that are working when we even just do a calculation, and 2 of those are visual pathways. And in fact, the dorsal visual pathway is the brain area that is responsible for representing quantity. It is a visual pathway. So I actually have a funny story about this picture. I've written this latest paper that we put out with a neuroscientist at Stanford, and that was interesting, collaborating with him. And I kept saying, no, we can't say the PFNG goes into the FNG, and we were working to get the language accessible. And then one day he said to me, oh, I've made a cartoon for our paper. And I thought, oh great, it's going to be like, brains on a treadmill or whatever, and he sent me this. Kathy says she wants to go to happy hour with a brain scientist, which is really curious. So he made this for us, and improving kids' maths achievement actually means improving the communication between these different brain areas. We cannot just keep strengthening one area, which is numbers, which is abstract numbers. We have to strengthen these different brain areas. So we released this paper on our site a few days ago. It's getting lots and lots of traffic. We've also, and it explains the brain science about why mathematics should be more visual. Everything, K-12, K-16 mathematics can be visual. We also have released a new set of visual activities, a teacher guide, and The Atlantic just published a piece of the research on Wednesday. I'll show you that in a sec. But this paper is trying to counter 2 really strong myths in education. One is that visual mathematics is just a prelude to more abstract mathematics. You play with visuals so you can abstract. That's not right. Visual mathematics is just as powerful of going from an abstract idea to extending it to high levels. It should go all through levels of mathematics. We're also trying to counter the idea that visual mathematics is for low-level students. That if you want to draw, that means you should go off into a special needs classroom. These are really important, damaging myths that are out there. And we have found in our teaching that when you take the same mathematics and teach it with numbers, there are immediately status differences in classrooms. Kids will say, oh, I finished, that's easy. You teach that same mathematics visually and they disappear. It's really powerful. And I talk about Howard Gardner's learning styles in there because although that idea of people having different intelligences, I think was helpful in expanding how we think about intelligence. It's been used in bad ways. We don't want to say to kids, you're not a visual learner, or you are a visual learner. Everybody should be strengthening the visual areas of their brains. So I've got a number of studies in the paper that are pretty shocking. I just read this one. It was published in 2008. 4 15-minute sessions of kids playing a number line completely eliminated the differences of kids coming in from low-income backgrounds and middle-income backgrounds. They started off with big knowledge differences in the early years, 4 15-minute sessions. And part of what we do at our website, UCube, is really try and get this powerful research knowledge out to teachers who can use it, and I know do use it. And a really striking area, when I learned about this with the brain scientists, I was like, wow, we have to get this out. So this is so cool. Turns out, when we work on a maths problem, all of us, adults, we're actually seeing fingers in our brains. There are 2 areas of the brain that you can see here, one of which it will light up when you're using fingers. The other area will light up when the brain is seeing fingers to help with a calculation. It turns out that finger perception is really important, and what they mean by finger perception is this. If you ask kids to put their hand under a table and touch a finger, can they tell you which of their fingers is being touched? That's a test of finger perception. The kids literally know their fingers. And when they train kids on finger perception, their maths achievement goes up. Also, other interesting things, adults will see fingers more when the problems are harder, and children. Everybody, when it gets really complicated, your finger area of your brain lights up. College students, finger areas predict their calculation scores. They know their fingers, predict how well they do on calculation tests. And finger perception in grade 1 is a better prediction of maths achievement in grade 2 than test scores. Yes, so I'll get there. Brian Butterworth, top neuroscientist, says this: without finger perception and finger counting, numbers will never have a normal representation in the brain. So, lovely examples out there. We all know of schools and parents that try and stop kids counting on fingers. Kumon advises to parents that finger counting is a no-no, and parents who see their children counting on fingers should report them to the instructor. These are the sort of ideas that are out there. In fact, one Kumon blog site, the instructors say, never let them use their fingers, use other things instead, use other manipulatives. So, we know, unfortunately, in classrooms and homes across the country, finger use is regarded as babyish. Students are told they're not allowed to. In fact, I opened the paper on our website by talking about a real story, which was a parent phoning me up and saying that her 5-year-old had come home crying because her teacher had not allowed her to use her fingers in class. When we stop kids using fingers, when they need fingers, that is akin to halting their mathematical development. It is that important we change this. So, what are the recommendations of the neuroscientists? First of all, they say it is fingers that should be the link between numbers and their visual representation. Don't use other things, use fingers. They should also be the way kids are learning arithmetic. And this kind of amused me, or worried me, I don't know which, in the paper, where they concluded by saying schools should focus more on finger discrimination. And Kathy and I were saying, focus more on finger discrimination? No school focuses, no curriculum I know of focuses on finger discrimination. Nobody even knows what it is. Oh, this is the Atlantic article. So they published a piece of my paper in the Atlantic on Wednesday. This morning it did have 15,000 Facebook shares, so it's getting out there. You can find that if you just Google the Atlantic and fingers. That will come up. I'm not going to make any jokes about Donald Trump. So somebody asked, how do you train kids on fingers? So we have developed from the training that the neuroscientists did. So having kids have coloured dots on their fingers and then play like piano type keys. I'm sure we did this as a starter for all the teachers out there, but I'm sure you can develop further great things and send them to us. Having kids trace with a maze, and again, different fingers. We've also got slightly higher level ones where kids are picking up coins with different fingers. But this is really important. So I'm just, as I said, I'm constantly amazed how this research is there, that a brain scientist in 1999 said, if we're not using fingers, your kids are not going to develop this part of their brain, and none of it is out there. So we're working hard to get research out. This is an interesting area along with this visual thinking. And it's an area of research that's been around for quite a while, called embodied cognition, which points out that it's very hard to talk about mathematics without using gesture. If you describe a circle, as this teacher is doing, for example. And they have been saying for a long time, mathematics must be held in these sensory motor memories. It's not just in a sort of calculation area of the brain. Now, this doesn't mean we should teach students our gestures, but what it means is we want kids to experience math both physically and visually so that they can have these powerful memories. So I want to show you an example now from our summer math camp that we taught last year in the summer. And we're going to watch some video now. So we brought in 81 students over the summer at Stanford. And these students came in all having had pretty bad math experiences. And we taught them about mindset. On the first day, I went to each of the classes, there were 4 classes, and gave them the presentation, Brains Grow, The Girl with Half a Brain, Mistakes are Important, There's No Such Thing as a Math Person. That presentation I gave is on our website, if any of you want to share it to your kids. And then we also taught them open mathematics. We taught them, because you can't just tell kids math is a growth subject and mistakes are great, if you then grade down mistakes or give narrow questions where they don't see any space for growth. So we taught them mathematics that was open, we valued all of their different ideas, we had discussions, you'll see. But this is some evidence of the impact of the camp. These are the 81 kids when they came into camp. There's 1 bar for each child on there, and this was a pre-test that they took in their district on algebra. These were 7th and 8th graders, mainly 7th grade. And you can see we brought kids in from a wide range of achievement. Kids who are high achieving, but also kids who scored 0 on the pre-test. We grouped them together in classes, we didn't track obviously. At the end, we taught them for 18 lessons. 18 days later, we gave them this test. And there was an average increase of 50% from the kids. So this is why this mathematics is so important. We have to teach kids both the brain science and the mindset messages, and we're going to watch me say some to the kids in a minute, but we also have to teach them mathematics that's more open, it's about discussion and ideas. So just one time in camp, we actually taught them maths physically. We didn't do this any other time, but it was very interesting to me that when kids learn this idea physically, they understood it so deeply. So what we taught them, even though they were in 7th grade, we taught them something that trips up Stanford students, which is velocity, time, distance graphs. And we taught them this by using a TI motion sensor, where the kids walked a path, and the motion detector followed their path, and their goal was to try and match the graph that was put up next to them. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to see some of it in the video when we watch. I'm going to show you some edited clips. What happened that was so amazing is each group nominated a person to walk the graph, and they coached them. And the first walkers were terrible, way off. But each group that went got a little bit better, like they were learning from each other, until the last group was amazing. And so, you're not going to see all the groups, but you'll hear the little message I give to them, and then you'll see some later groups. I hope you'll be able to see the graph, we'll see. It might be hard with the lights, but... Those kids, as I said, did amazingly well, the whole class, on that very difficult velocity concept and understanding graphs. So the kids were interviewed at the end of camp, and here's a couple of their comments to the interviews that I thought were really interesting. This is one boy who said, they taught us how math is for everybody. And I believed that I wasn't a math person before, but now I believe that anybody can do math, and that helped me a lot. And the way I thought the math was all about right answers and wrong, but it's really about ideas, and it's very creative. And that helped me like it a lot more. These kids transformed, both because we changed their beliefs about who could do math. All 81 of the kids, despite there being quite a few high achievers, all 81 of the kids at the start of camp said, I'm not a math person. This is another student saying, I've never had such a visual version of math, where making mistakes was so acceptable and you were able to look at it as you were so close, you could get there from learning from that mistake. I've never had that experience in another classroom, and that's probably what made it so special. And then this last one I thought was really interesting because the interviewer asked them, what did you think about camp? And the two girls said they trusted us. And the interviewer said, what do you mean by that? And she said, we had spinning chairs. And this was really interesting because they did actually have chairs with wheels on the bottom. Nobody span their chair, not once during camp. But they thought they could spin their chairs and they felt that level of trust, which is great. So we're going to watch another clip now. And this comes teaching this class. We were actually team teaching. And of course that's a great luxury. But both of us were also directing and running the camp. And we didn't realize it was going to be kind of hard to do that and teach at the same time. So we weren't often, we weren't always both there, but in this case we were. And as I said, you're going to see some students present you don't know, but I can tell you that these were not high achieving kids. So there are two questions that they talk about in the video. The first one was, how many miles did Jo travel to the library? And the second one was, how many miles did Jo walk and chat with her friend? So I want to tell you that we taught the kids a strategy that turned out to be very powerful to them. And I learned this from Kathy Humphries, and it's a strategy to help kids to reason mathematically. And what we said to the kids, as I learned from Kathy, is it's really important to be convincing when you have a mathematical idea and to convince other people. And there's 3 levels of convincing. At the lowest level, you can convince yourself. A level up from that, you can convince a friend, but the highest level is to convince a skeptic. So whenever you give answers, you have to give that high level of convincing. But then we also said, we also want you to be skeptics. So whenever somebody is presenting or giving an idea, be skeptical. See if they've proved it to you and really convinced you. And the kids loved this. When we presented this to them about the skeptics, it changed the classroom dynamics. And you're going to hear kids in this clip talk about being a skeptic. So I have some questions for you to think about while we watch this and chat about for a bit. What do you see students doing in this 6-minute clip that you don't think is typical in classrooms? What do you think is empowering them to act in these ways? And how did the question design impact what happened? So these are all possible things to think and talk about. You don't need to talk about all of them. So first, just a short clip to show you that these were the questions we had on the board. And we had a few different class, one of our great undergrads at Stanford. She's going to run around with the mic. So does anybody have any just quick comments on here so we can get a few out? There's one right back there, once, if you can scamper back. They're on the end of the row, so that's good.
So one of the things that I noticed during this video was that there was none of the teacher doing the math for the kids. It was up to the kids to do all the math. And not only that, when they were presenting, this teacher never told one of the kids that they were either right or wrong. They just let the kids go, discuss, and develop their own ideas about the problem and how they interpret it. And that was like spot on, perfect.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions? I'm going to want to close to you, Barry, once. There's one behind you.
I think the biggest one was the relinquish of control. She had them go up with the ruler and talk with the ruler, and to have that control and have an object to explain their thinking, it gave her power as opposed to the teacher having the power.
Great, thank you. These are nice and short, I like that. So we have another one. You choose once. There's one right in the middle over there.
I really noticed how much the kids felt trusted and that they took the time to listen and talk to each other one at a time. And for kids to feel that relaxed, especially in spinny chairs, I thought really spoke to you having created a really comfortable place for them to work, and I thought that was really impressive.
Thank you. I mean, I can tell you that telling these kids that we love mistakes grow your brain, that single message was like mind-blowing for them. And they said to the interviewers, I would never put my hand up in my school classroom, but here I will, because they're really interested in all our ideas. So, you know, really wanting kids' ideas and building on whatever idea they gave us was important, yeah.
I really liked however you set it up initially. They knew what the resources were. So even the first girl was like, what was the question again? She had the yardstick, and then she got really clear on what it was, and then did her best to answer it. And then someone else, she went to the group to check, and so they knew what the resources were in the room, they knew their group, and then they spoke to each other's answers. They were barely speaking to you.
Yeah.
And I also love that they, at the end, realized when you said, oh, I should have written that, they learned there was an implicit understanding that they can ask questions. And we need a clarification, because it says here, and it doesn't, you know, like another step would be, yeah, right answers may not be readily available without getting more information.
Right. Or justifying how they'd answered the question, yeah. Which I hope in the Common Core assessments would give them the full marks. I think we're going to just take one more, sorry. I think it's going to be over there, I see.
Thanks, Jill. First of all, what's really cool is that sometimes teachers stay away from this kind of a lesson because they feel, what if I can't follow one of my students' thinking and I can't really provide guidance? But it seems like you guys do a really good job of just letting it go and letting students pick up on the thinking and processing.
Thanks, yeah, that's nice. So, thank you for those comments. Those are really great. And I want to tell you now, I'll finish off with some resources for you that you might find useful. But we need a better way. I'm actually very critical of the academy, the research enterprise in universities, because we can't keep publishing research evidence in academic journals that are locked up. Nobody can even get access to them. We started this website really just like a year and a half ago, and it's been quite amazing. We have lots of resources on there and papers. How many UQbians are in the room that have been to the website? A year ago, we had 5,000 visits a month. We now have 500,000 visits to the website. We just launched, as well as this new visual paper and activities, we also launched on our site a new network, because we want to support teachers in making math more visual and other things. And so if you go to the Visual Math Network, you can download the papers. But there are also these different sections. We have a discussion section. Just discuss the ideas in the paper. At the moment, the finger research is the big hot topic that's being discussed the most. I loved this comment that was left on the site from a teacher, Joanna Jimenez, who said, I was made to feel bad for counting on my fingers in 3rd grade. To this day, I use my fingers and I encourage my students to do so. I wish I could get on my broomstick and fly to my teacher's place of retirement, counting on my fingers. She said she felt vindicated, which is great. There's also a section on teaching ideas. If you want teachers to come up sharing, this is a great way I taught this, or you can pose a question, can anyone help me teach this? We actually also have a help section where people are saying, how can I teach this visually? And then all these other teachers are sharing things, it's wonderful. And a connect section where we just said, if you want to meet other UQbians, if you want to know other people in your area, come and tell us come and post where you are, and others can connect with you. And very soon we have every state across the US, different countries. So come to the network. The other thing I want to announce is, did anyone in here take my teacher online class? Could I see a show of hands? Great, well lots of you didn't, so if you didn't, there's a new version of a teacher online class I teach that's open today for registration. The actual course starts June 7th, so it's a great summer project. It costs individually $125, but we managed to get Stanford to lower the price with groups. So if you take it with a group of teachers, it goes right down. It is a full intensive PD, so it's not like a little course. There's a teacher guide for groups to take it together. This was the first online PD that districts gave teachers salary credit for. I think it's like 30 units of salary credit. And teachers loved it. 95% of teachers at the end said they would change their teaching as a result of taking it. We've just re-recorded it. If you've taken it, if you've taken the whole thing, I wouldn't take it again, but if you haven't taken it, or you didn't take the whole thing, if you like this, there's just more of that there. Also, if you did take the original teacher course, coming in the fall is a new online class for you, and it's going to be called Mathematical Mindsets. It's going to have a lot of the video from the summer school, how we set up the classes. I'm just kind of assuming you've taken the teacher course in taking this one, so the teacher course is kind of a prelude to this. I have a new book that I know some of you have, and right after this we have a book signing in the Wiley booth in the conference hall, so I'll be heading over there. And then I want to share with you a video that's kind of just a fun video, and I'm actually always really embarrassed to share this video because so I taught this camp with my undergrads, and one of the undergrads loves to make music videos, and she came to me one day with the other undergrads and said, we're going to make a music video at the camp with Taylor Swift music. And I was like, great, let's do it. And she said, we've decided you can do the rap in it. And I said, I'm not doing the rap. And these undergrads who'd taken the course with me all looked at me and said, but what about your growth mindset? So I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to do the rap. This is bad. So here it is. It's a great site. And underneath it, some guy's written, you can tell these kids aren't learning any math. I actually wrote, well, the haters are going to hate AK. Go ahead. Carol Dweck said to me the other day that she'd seen this video of kids talking about synapses, and she was like, what are all these American children doing, saying synapse instead of synapse? And then she went, oh, and then I realized I've obviously been infiltrating my British pronunciation. We can all do this with maths. We can all do it. And to be honest, we can't wait for publishers to catch up and read research and make the materials in classrooms good. If you're an elementary teacher, we're actually going to start writing our own materials for elementary teachers as well. It's coming. But, and up at higher levels, but we're going to start at elementary. But this is what anyone can do with any maths question. Any awful, boring textbook question. Ask kids, how can you see that idea? How do you see it? When they work on maths, ask them, why do you think that works? Why does that method work? And this method is different. How are these different methods connected to each other? Can you represent this idea in different ways? For example, a picture, a cartoon, a doodle even. It really doesn't matter what it is. If kids are thinking about an idea and representing it in a different way, visually, that is going to be growing these visual pathways and connections that students need. Always, why does that answer make sense? If you ask that question every time students produce an answer, why does that make sense? It changes the whole culture of the classroom. And Kathy Humphries is a great example of this in her teaching, that she asks always, why does that make sense? Not just when kids get it wrong. At first, if you ask that question and kids aren't used to it, you'll find, I've done this, I'll say, why does that make sense? And they'll go, oh, I'm sorry, and scribble it out. But all the time, why does that make sense? When teachers make these changes, they are powerful. I love that. You guys can do this. You can make the changes for kids. And it is so important that we do this. And when we make these changes for kids, when we teach them about mindset, and we give them brain messages, and we teach them open mathematics, they talk in amazing ways. We have interviews with these kids who say, I feel open now. I feel alive. I feel free. It's quite incredible. I believe that I can do anything. And when we change maths for kids, we don't just give them higher test scores. We give them an intellectual empowerment they take into the rest of their lives. You can talk to adults about how much a bad math experience changed their lives. In the same way, a good math experience can completely liberate kids and change everything. And if you don't believe me, listen to this boy. It's my last clip I want to share with you. So my final words for you is we can do this together. You can do it. We're here to help you. Come join our math revolution. Sign up on YouTube and email. You'll get updated with everything we're putting out. And we can change everything for students. And thank you for being an amazing audience.